and channeling investment into vital sectors like infrastructure, defence and technology. The financial and professional services sector is the driving force behind the United Kingdom's economy. Though, of course, in the past month or so, the air conditioning industry has been running it pretty close. As Lord Mayor, I'm honoured to be the global ambassador for the financial professional services industry and for the City of London, which is the #1 financial services centre in the world. That is thanks to our extensive capital markets, our deep pools of talent, enabling regulatory environment, thriving innovation ecosystem, preeminent expertise in areas like asset management and maritime services. As I have said many times during the course of my term of office, including to Monsieur le Président Emmanuel Macron when we hosted him at Guildhall last week, if you want to insure against catastrophe, do it in London. If you want to finance things on a green basis, do it in London. If you want to raise debt or equity for your businesses, do it in London. If you want to fall out with your partners, sue them in London. Yet, while the financial and professional services sector is the driver of our economy, I would argue that we have been on autopilot for far too long. My former boss, Christine Lagarde, once said, "The financial industry is a service industry, and it should serve others before it serves itself." How much more impact could the financial and professional services sector have if we overcame our almost pathological aversion to risk-taking and proactively pursued growth? If we really considered how to serve others before we serve ourselves. With the Office of Budget Responsibility's warning of the daunting risks to the public finances from rising debt ringing in our ears, we need to accept that sustainable growth cannot come from the public purse alone. The financial and professional services sectors have an important role to play. Tonight, I'd like to give you an update on the steps that we have taken to drive growth and competitiveness through my mayoral theme, Growth Unleashed. It is an unabashed call to be bolder, to think smarter and take off the handbrake. Growth Unleashed is a culmination and the next logical step of the many significant reports and initiatives that have sought to address stagnant growth and encourage positive risk culture in recent years. These include the Khalifa Review for UK FinTech, Lord Hill's UK Listing Review, the City Corporation's Vision for Economic Growth, the Mansion House Compact, the work of the Capital Markets Industry Task Force, and the financial services core of the UK's modern industrial strategy. As you may have seen from the nifty schematic on the back of your menu card, Growth Unleashed marshals the work of the remarkable authors of those works and turns them into action. Under the central arrow, Mayoralty in Action, you can see the initiatives that we are pursuing during the course of this year, which point toward two key outcomes: increased jobs and growth, and better outcomes for long-term savers and pensioners. To take just one example, our scale-up showcases have given some of the country's best tech scale-ups seeking to raise between £5 and £30 million the opportunity to pitch directly to major domestic investors to help secure the capital that they need to scale, thrive and stay in Britain. These events have been enormously popular with British tech companies and also with potential investors alike. They have filled the gap as we urgently need to scale up the number of scale-up events that we have. We look forward to building on this to support the new FinTech scale-up unit within the PRA and the FCA. We will also partner with the British Business Bank and Innovate Finance, engaging industry groups across the United Kingdom to address the challenges British fintechs face in accessing capital. Of course, initiatives like our scale-up showcases are just one part of the jigsaw puzzle. I've been clear that if we are serious about achieving greater growth, increased private investment, economic and regulatory reform must be complemented by a reform of our mindset. Henry Kissinger frequently said that the pitfall that often besets a country or a sector is self-doubt. I have argued that the financial and professional services sector is the first place to find growth in our economy. The buildings are already built. The people are already trained. The regulatory system is developing rapidly to remain absolutely world-class. The missing ingredient, everybody, is confidence. In an increasingly competitive world, where rival global financial centres like Singapore and New York are investing and innovating really at speed, there is no place for stereotypical British reserve. We have to go out and play to our strengths. We need to stop waiting for the opportunities to land in our laps. There needs to be a change of mindset in the sector to match the opportunities that exist in the world today. That is why this year I have badged myself as the city's cheerleader-in-chief, seeking to inject a bit more of the can-do spirit into how we talk and we think about the United Kingdom's financial and professional services sector. I've been jumping on planes, I've been banging on doors and selling our offer to the world. And I've been using my size 12s to encourage British business leaders to do the same. Because let's face it, companies have got to stop using regulation, actual or perceived, as an excuse for lack of action. It's the kind of positive spirit that even saw my beloved Tottenham Hotspur win their first European trophy in over 40 years. If they can do that, you can do anything. All of us in this room, government, regulators, industry, are on the same page about the pressing need for both regulatory and mindset reform. Without wishing to preempt you, Chancellor, I would like to congratulate you on the publication of the Leeds reforms, which build on your previous commitment to regulate for growth, not just for risk. Reintroducing informed risk-taking into the system to boost and grow and deliver better returns for the public. The City Corporation's 2023 roadmap, Vision for Economic Growth, called for the development of a long-term strategy for the financial and professional services sector to maximise its contribution to jobs and to growth. The government has delivered with a new 10-year plan for the sector, with a financial services growth and competitiveness strategy, which seeks to make the United Kingdom the #1 destination for financial services by 2035, and a Treasury-endorsed Financial Services Skills Compact. On behalf of the sector, thank you for heeding our calls. We look forward to working with you to ensure the strategy and the compact are successfully implemented. It is wonderful to see the machine cranking into gear after so many years of rumination and hesitation, much like Oasis getting back together. But now we need to go supersonic. Some might say. Come on, keep up, keep up, keep up, keep up. I got that joke anyway. Our pension system is a ticking time bomb. It could detonate within a generation. A baby born in the United Kingdom in 2025 has an average life expectancy of 82 years, over a decade longer than someone born in 1960. It is, of course, great news that we are living for longer, but that means our pensions have to stretch further too. Recent research found that an astonishing 2 in 5 workers are at risk of being unable to cover their basic needs in retirement. How do we remedy this situation? The answer is, of course, to ensure people's cash is working at maximum capacity. Estimates suggest that a 22-year-old new entrant into a default DC scheme with just a 5% allocation to unlisted equities could achieve a 7 to 12% increase in their total retirement savings. Building on the remarkable work of my predecessor, Sir Nicholas Lyons, through the Mansion House Compact, and then complementing the government's wider pension reforms, the Mansion House Accord is a commitment of 17 of our largest workplace pension providers, representing 90% of the default DC universe, to allocate 10% of default DC funds to alternative investments by 2030. At least half of that will be invested here in the United Kingdom and the rest around the world. That is unlocking up to £100 billion of investment for major infrastructure projects, clean energy and exciting scale-ups. The Accord means that British pension savers will have a stake in our nation's growth, but it also has the added benefit of making these investments more attractive for international investors also. Potential international partners tell me that they want to invest in the United Kingdom, but with some honourable exceptions, many of whom are in this room, there is a lack of domestic equity providers in size to act as domestic lead investors into those infrastructure projects. The Accord helps to fill that need and also creates the opportunity for British pension funds and international investors to go hunting together for exciting investment opportunities in unlisted equities and other alternative asset classes across the world, as well as here in the United Kingdom. On the subject of which, I'd like to wish a warm welcome to perhaps my friend, His Excellency Khalid Al Falih, the Saudi Investment Minister. It's a joy to have you here, sir. Thank you. Thank you. His Excellency has already met a number of the Accord signatories to discuss investment opportunities in both our kingdoms. When international investors do invest here in the United Kingdom, they will soon be supported by a new concierge service within the Office for Investment, a public-private partnership investment hub we recommended to government to unlock £10 billion in additional financial services investment by 2030. I would like to thank the Policy Chairman, Chris Hayward, for his leadership in driving the hub forward. I also look forward to the Chancellor announcing further details of this later on this evening. Our goal is to make the Accord self-sustaining. The City Corporation and the Government can convene and encourage, but real reform must be owned and delivered by industry. We have today unveiled the Employer Pension Pledge, a voluntary commitment by employers to make a public vow to consider overall value for money rather than solely cost when reviewing or selecting pension providers. The pledge is a signal of leadership, acknowledging that the questions employers ask and the principles they apply shape the outcomes on which their employees will one day retire. I'm pleased to announce that the pledge has now been signed by 23 of the United Kingdom's largest employers. It was 22 this morning, it's now 23 this afternoon. And that covers more than 1 million savers, including Tesco, which is the nation's second largest private sector employer. A real-life example that every little helps. I got that joke as well. I hope you did. The pledge is also supported by some of our biggest business bodies, including the CBI, the IOD, FSB, British Chamber of Commerce, Make UK and REBA. I know several more employers are currently reviewing the terms of the pledge, and I hope and expect that many large companies will soon join this movement before too long. My message to all British employers tonight is this: the direction of travel is clear. You can either lead the way or you can get left behind. This is the moment to show that you can care not only about your employees' present, but also about their future. I urge all those companies who have not yet signed this pledge to do so without delay. To support the Accord and the pledge, we also today are announcing the launch of a professional education plan, magnificently supported by the CISI, and Michael Colfontaine is here as the chair of that organisation. And it's backed by the Chartered Body Alliance, other leading professional bodies, and also by universities. The plan will give pension trustees, managers and policymakers throughout the pension value chain the tools and the confidence that they need to invest more productively. Wonderfully, these professional bodies have all committed to offer this training at cost for the benefit of the British economy. That is a real commitment from them, for which I am most grateful. The Accord, the Pledge and the Education Plan represent bold commitments from the financial industry to serve others before it serves itself. But we can go further to help British households secure their long-term financial future. We know that British savers have far less participation in capital markets than their international peers, with Britons currently holding £280 billion in accounts earning no interest at all. So, Chancellor, I welcome your intention to create a new retail investment culture here in the United Kingdom, with the announcement of a new industry-led campaign to give working people the information and support that they need to start investing in stocks and shares to grow their savings once again. This is something for which I've been calling and will complement the Financial Conduct Authority's proposed shake-up of the financial advice market. This would mean that companies can provide guidance to people sitting on too much cash to put something into shares to get better returns over time. From the schematic, you will also be able to see that I have kick-started an important conversation on how chief risk officers can unlock value through responsible risk-taking. Creating a new first-of-its-kind network with the help of BoE's Business School. It will bring together CROs from across the country to share insights, to build community, and also to help shape the future of risk leadership here in the United Kingdom. This network will encourage firms to take additional, calculated, sensible risk. This complements our wider work on a report from A&O Shearman called Regulating for Growth, which outlines the steps that we can take to enable a more responsible risk-taking atmosphere across the economy. I would like to thank the government for taking action on our recommendation on consumer duty and on wholesale firms, with the view to boosting competitiveness and also streamlining regulatory requirements, a clear signal of a new approach to risk. As the global ambassador, not just for London and the South East, but the entirety of the United Kingdom's financial and professional services sector, I want to see investment flowing into all parts of the country. An example is that we are working with Scottish Financial Enterprise to showcase investment opportunities in major Scottish growth sectors to around 150 investors from around the world at our Scottish Investment Summit in October. At what is perhaps the most dangerous time for the world since the Second World War, the city must also consider its role in enabling access to finance for defence and security. During the rest of my mayoralty, we will have programmes focused on how the city can bolster the United Kingdom's defence and resilience and how we can invest into those sectors. And this complements the City of London Police's tireless work to ensure our physical and economic security as the national policing lead for fraud, economic and cybercrime. Finally, London owes so much of its success to its many communities and the extremely international workforce that we are blessed to have. I'm pleased to say that we now have 9 city-belonging networks to amplify and celebrate the square miles communities, such as the City Muslim Network and the neurodiversity in the city, with a further 6 planned to be launched over the course of coming months. I'm enormously proud of what those networks have achieved so far. A few months before I became Lord Mayor, when I was asked by the City of London Corporation what I wanted as my strapline for the mayoral theme, my colleagues were a little bit taken aback by my blunt suggestion of get on with it. Well, ultimately we went for Growth Unleashed. Get on with it is still the subtext. At a time of geopolitical uncertainty, when it would be easy to stand still, we have been getting on with it, connecting innovative scale-ups to much-needed funding and turning passive pension pots into humming engines for national renewal. If we are going to create new jobs and growth and achieve better outcomes for long-term savers and pensioners, we need government, regulators and the financial and professional services sector to come with us. So I'm calling on business leaders to jump on planes, bang on doors and shout loudly about our strengths. I'm calling upon major employers to step up, back their workers and sign the employer pension pledge. And I'm calling on government to work in partnership with the industry to drive forward the lead reforms and also unleash a wave of dynamic growth that touches every community across the country. And please, government, continue to do everything within your power to ensure workers and investors can succeed, thrive and stay here. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a duty to serve others before we serve ourselves. Let's get on with it. Thank you very much indeed. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I have one last request, and that is, could I please ask you all to rise if you are able and join me in a toast. The toast is the prosperity to the public purse and the health of the Chancellor of the Exchequer. The Chancellor.
Chancellor. My Lord Mayor, we're ready to begin. Please mind your ears. Pray silence for the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Right Honourable Rachel Reeves, Member of Parliament for Leeds West and Pudsey.
Thank you. Thank you. Lord Mayor, Governor, ladies and gentlemen, my thanks to the City of London Corporation for hosting us here this evening, and to the Lord Mayor for his address, as well as to the Economic Secretary to the Treasury for all of her hard work. It is a year now since my party was elected to office, and a year since I was appointed as Chancellor of the Exchequer. Recently, on a visit to a primary school, a young girl said to me, "If you could have any job in the world, what would it be?" Now, given the events of the last few weeks, I suspect many of you would have sympathised if I had said anything but the Chancellor, but I didn't, because I am proud to stand here tonight and address you for a second time at Mansion House as the Chancellor of the Exchequer. This evening, I want to talk about the progress that we have made over the past year, restoring stability, securing investment, and delivering reform. And I want to talk about the future, the economy that we are building, the opportunities that we are seizing, and the prosperity that we together are creating. In my May's lecture last year, I talked about how a resilient economy must be built on security. And the importance of that security has been brought into sharp focus in recent months. As the world changes before our eyes and global economies are becoming more uncertain, the job of a responsible government is not just to watch that change. We must step up, not step back. We must build a dynamic economy on strong and secure foundations, where success is not limited to a handful of sectors, a few people, or certain parts of the country, but where the rewards of hard work are shared, harnessing the contribution of every part of Britain. This is the foundation of an economy and a country that is more active and more confident, where people and business look to the future and talk about hope, talk about opportunity, assured of their own capability and the ability of our country to boldly face the challenges ahead, and certain in the prize when they succeed, of higher wages and higher living standards, the renewal of Britain in every home and every high street. To put it simply, a Britain that is better off. Now, the financial services sector is absolutely critical to my ambitions for our country. It is one of the largest and most successful sectors in the UK, worth around 10% of total economic output, and supporting 1.2 million jobs in clusters right around the UK. In Cardiff and Belfast and Edinburgh, where we have growing fintechs. In Manchester, where BNY Mellon have their new Angel Square hub. And in London, the financial centre of the world. And financial services is also critical in people's everyday lives. Whether that's a couple looking to buy their own home, a budding entrepreneur wanting to start their first business, or people getting more out of the money that they are putting aside for the future. And that's what these plans that I will set out tonight deliver. Growth must be built on a platform of economic stability. When we came into this office, it was this government, that restored Britain's reputation as a beacon of stability by putting the public finances back on a firm footing, getting debt on a downward path, while investing prudently alongside business. That was, and still is, the right choice. Because there is nothing progressive, nothing Labour, about a government that simply spends more and more each year on debt interest, instead of on the priorities of ordinary working people. And fiscal stability is a choice that reflects economic reality. National debt remains at its highest level since the 1960s, and globally the cost of borrowing has increased in recent years. Now, it's not the inheritance that I would have chosen, but it is the reality. And that is why the Prime Minister and I and this government remain committed to our non-negotiable fiscal rules. The stability that we have restored is already delivering. 4 cuts in interest rates by the Bank of England since the general election, reducing the cost of mortgages and of business lending. Real wages up by more in the first 10 months of this Labour government than they increased by in the first 10 years of the previous Conservative government. And investment is returning to our economy. At the spending review, I set out £120 billion of public investment over the next 5 years. And last month, the Prime Minister confirmed that the UK had attracted £120 billion of private investment in just the last 12 months. In a globally competitive market, firms all over the world are choosing to invest right here in Britain as one of the best places to start up, to scale up, and to list. The FTSE is at an all-time high, today for the first time ever, breaking 9,000 points. London is home to the deepest equity capital market in Europe. It is the 3rd biggest venture capital market globally. And the London Stock Exchange is the most international in the world, with the FTSE soon to include shares listed not just in sterling, but also in dollars and in euros. Last year, to ensure that the UK remains competitive, we made significant changes to the listing regime. For example, relaxing dual-class share rules to give founders flexibility to pursue their growth ambitions. The FCA have today published their final prospectus rules, simplifying the listing and capital raising processes for firms of all sizes. And as I committed to last year at Mansion House, we are delivering Pisces, a brand new type of stock exchange for private company share trading, with the first trading events due to take place later this year. And I'm announcing a new listings task force with the Office for Investment to attract the best businesses in the world to IPO here in London. But we must do more to ensure that British savers benefit from the success of growing British businesses. Last year at Mansion House, I set out an overhaul of our pension system. And the Pension Schemes Bill, led by my colleague, the Pensions Minister, will be signed into law in the next few months. The creation of defined contribution and local government pension scheme megafunds will mean larger and more powerful pots of funding invested productively across the country. Pension funds and this government are united in our determination to deliver higher returns for savers and more investment in the economy. That is why, since last year, funds covering the majority of defined contribution market have committed to the Mansion House Accord, pledging to invest at least 10% of their main funds into private assets, such as infrastructure and growth markets, with at least half of that going into UK projects. And I would like to congratulate the Lord Mayor on his employer pension pledge. I am delighted, Lord Mayor, to see businesses, including Tesco, First Group and Octopus, making this commitment. And like you, Lord Mayor, I look forward to seeing many other companies joining up. The UK economy is enhanced by its outward-facing approach. And this year, we have built on that with our new trade deals. A trade deal with the United States, where we were the first country to sign a deal so that British businesses are better protected against tariffs, and where we have worked with our G7 colleagues to avert new taxes. I'm pleased to welcome US Securities and Exchange Commissioner Hester Peirce here tonight, who is driving forward proposals for greater digital collaboration between our two financial centres. Thank you for being here. and a trade deal with the European Union, where our strategic partnership will slash red tape and reduce costs for business, as well as providing a platform to further deepen our relationship in future. And I am pleased to welcome the European Union's Financial Services Commissioner, Maria-Louise Albuquerque. Maria-Louise, we met earlier today with the Economic Secretary to the Treasury to discuss our continued cooperation on financial services, and I look forward to working more closely with you. And a trade deal with India too, with whom our recent FTA agreement will give Britain the best trading relationship of any country in the world with India. And we have concluded the first economic and financial dialogue with China in 6 years. And we are implementing the Berne Financial Services Agreement with Switzerland too. At the G20 in South Africa later this week, I will continue the call that I made at the IMF spring meetings for countries to come together to tackle trade imbalances and drive growth, underpinned by stronger multilateral institutions. And I look forward to hearing more on this from the Governor in his address. And I would like to congratulate him on his recent appointment as chair of the Financial Stability Board. A testament, Andrew. A testament to both Andrew's commitment and this government's commitment to international standards. Britain is open for business, open for trade, and open for investment. And that's why we must be willing to change how we do things to stay competitive in the global economy. We have ripped up the planning rules. We've swept away regulations. And we have published our industrial strategy. And today we can go further by announcing the Financial Services Growth and Competitiveness Strategy, including my Leeds reforms, named after one of the UK's great hubs for financial services, and the city that I have been proud to represent as a Member of Parliament for the last 15 years. These are the most wide-ranging package of reforms to financial services regulation in more than a decade. At Mansion House last year, I said that we must regulate for growth, not just for risk. We are delivering today on that commitment, while continuing to protect financial stability, so that the benefits of a thriving, growing financial services sector can be realised for people all over Britain. Let me set out the details of that package in 4 parts. First, I am rolling back regulation that has gone too far in seeking to eliminate risk. Second, I am delivering targeted changes in the areas where the UK already has particular strengths. Third, I am making changes to capital requirements to unlock more productive capital. And fourth, I am introducing measures to boost retail investment so that more savers can reap the benefits of UK economic success. I will begin with the biggest reforms. As I promised last year, I am delivering the most significant reform to the Financial Ombudsman Service since its inception, including proposals to limit for 10 years for claims. This will speed up the time it takes for consumers to get redress for their complaints, returning it to its original purpose as a simple, impartial arbitration service, and ensuring that it no longer acts as a quasi-regulator. And I welcome the announcement today made by the Financial Ombudsman Service that will reduce the interest rate it applies before a decision from 8% to base rate +1. I am introducing new targets for the FCA and the PRA to cut times on authorisations and approvals. And I have tasked the FCA with assessing the impact of the consumer duty and whether it unduly affects wholesale activity to ensure that regulators are really regulating for growth. And I'm streamlining the senior managers and certification regime, reducing the burdens it imposes on firms by 50% and slashing approval timelines so you can bring in talent to your business more quickly. My next set of reforms provide targeted regulatory support for the areas where the UK does already have a comparative advantage. For insurance, where Britain is the destination of choice for underwriting complex, specialised and high-value risk, I am introducing a new competitive framework for captive insurance. For asset management, Where the UK is the world's second largest centre, I am future-proofing the regulatory regime and will publish draft legislation in early 2026. For sustainable finance, I am determined to focus our efforts on policies that matter most to our world-leading sector and support investment in the transition. So after consultation and consideration, I have decided not to pursue a green taxonomy, but instead work with the regulators through the Transition Finance Council to capitalise on the £200 billion opportunity of the global transition to net zero. And for fintech, where almost half of Europe's fintechs are already based here in the UK, the PRA and the FCA are launching a scale-up unit to support innovative firms to grow in the UK, including in our world-leading payment system. And I will drive forward developments in blockchain technology, including tokenised securities and stablecoins, and an ambitious design for a new digital gilt instrument, so that UK financial services can be at the forefront of digital asset innovation. And because I believe that the UK is the best place in the world for financial services, today I've announced the Office for Investment's new concierge service. Launching by October this year, it will provide a tailored service to companies considering setting up or expanding in the UK. And I'm grateful to Chris Hayward from the City of London Corporation for his work to drive this forward. Thank you, Chris. Now let me turn to the changes I'm making to capital requirements to allow UK banks to do more lending and release more capital for investment into our infrastructure and into our businesses. First, I am supporting the Bank of England's decision to raise the asset threshold for MREL requirements to between £25 and £40 billion. This will benefit the challenger banks and bring increased competition and innovation to the market, and support those businesses to expand their footprint here in the UK. Second, I am confirming our approach to Basel 3.1, implementing lower capital requirements for domestically focused banks from January 2027, while preserving flexibility on our approach for international banks to ensure that the UK always remains competitive, whilst aligning with international standards. Third, I have committed to meaningful reform of the UK's ring-fencing regime, recognising that now is the time to go further in tackling inefficiency and boosting growth, while retaining the aspects of the regime that support financial stability and protect consumer deposits. And fourth, following the new growth-focused remit letter I sent in November, I welcome the Financial Policy Committee's announcement that it will review the overall level of bank capital needed for UK financial stability, reporting back to me by the end of this year. The review will inform the work that the Treasury is taking forward with the bank to ensure the prudential framework strikes the optimal balance to deliver resilience, growth, and competitiveness. And I welcome the recent changes the Financial Policy Committee has announced to the loan-to-income limit on mortgage lending, which the PRA and FCA are implementing immediately. That means tens of thousands more people could be able to get a mortgage in the next year alone, with Nationwide already offering its Helping Hand mortgage to more first-time buyers, supporting alone an additional 10,000 each year. And my thanks to Dame Debbie Crosby for her leadership. Thank you, Debbie. My final set of reforms are based on improving savings investment. I recognise the potential for ISA reform to improve returns for savers and access capital for UK businesses. I have confirmed that long-term asset funds can be included in stocks and shares ISAs, allowing long-term ISA investors to benefit from this innovative product. And I will continue to consider further changes to ISAs, engaging widely in the coming months, and recognising that despite the differing views on the right approach, we are united in wanting better outcomes for both UK savers and the UK economy. For too long, we have presented investment in too negative a light, quick to warn people of the risks without giving proper weight to the benefits. And our tangled system of financial advice and guidance has meant people cannot get the right support to make the right decisions for themselves. So that is why we are working with the FCA to introduce a brand new type of targeted support for consumers ahead of the new financial year. And I welcome the campaign to promote the benefits of retail investment, which will launch next April, and the action to look at our current approach to risk warnings, and that will report back in January. I'm grateful to Chris Cummings of the Investment Association for spearheading both of those initiatives that I know will make a difference. Thank you very much, Chris. Today, I have placed financial services at the heart of this government's growth mission, recognising that Britain cannot succeed and meet its growth ambitions without a financial sector that is fighting fit and thriving. The reforms that I have set out this evening are the next chapter in how I intend to support this growth. And I thank Gwyneth Nurse and her brilliant team at the Treasury for all of their hard work on this package. Thank you, Gwyneth. I knew that Gwyneth would get the biggest clap. I am also pleased to have been able to work in lockstep with our regulators. And I want to extend my thanks both to Nikhil Rathi and Sam Woods for their innovation and the work that they have done in response to my updated remit letters last year. Thank you, Nikhil, and thank you, Sam. We have been bold in regulating for growth in financial services. And I have been clear on the benefits that that will drive, with a ripple effect felt right across all sectors of our economy, putting pounds in the pockets of working people, getting better deals on their mortgages, better returns on their savings, and more jobs paying good wages in all parts of our country. As I look ahead, it is clear that there is more that we must do. In too many areas, regulation still acts as a boot on the neck of businesses, choking off the enterprise and innovation that is the lifeblood of economic growth. Regulators in other sectors must take up the call that I make this evening, not to bend to the temptation of excessive caution, but to boldly regulate for growth, in the service of prosperity for our whole country. I'm really proud of how far we have come in the last year as a government and as a country. I know that the changes that we have made will reform and transform our economy and our country. And I know that you will waste no time in seizing the opportunities that lie ahead, to build a stronger economy, to deliver the renewal of Britain, and to make working people in all parts of Britain better off. Thank you very much.
Praise silence for the Governor of the Bank of England, Mr. Andrew Bailey.
Lord Mayor, Lady Mayoress, Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen. Well, Lord Mayor, thank you for inviting us back for a second time in your mayoralty. I think we warned you on the first event that we would be back. And you were facing the consequences of last year's timetable.
But of course, it really falls into the category in reality of things that are just too good to be true. So reality has caught up this evening, and here are the Chancellor and I back again. So I'm going to use, as the Chancellor mentioned, I'm going to use my time, well, I'm actually going to use my time to tackle two subjects. Now, I'm probably breaking a rule of good speech making because, to be honest with you, there isn't much of a connection between the two subjects. I'm not going to overdo that. But I will say they are both highly topical, they're both highly relevant, and that's my justification. So the first, as the Chancellor mentioned, is big picture. It's the world economic situation and the need to refocus and restore multilateral institutions. The second concerns payments here in the UK. Now, I'm going to give you a bit of a spoiler or perhaps a relief alert. The first is considerably longer than the second. You will be pleased to hear, particularly when I get to the end of the first and you say, just how long is he going to go on for? So, to say that the state of the global economy and the impact of tariff announcements is in the news and significant is an understatement, of course. The shifts that we've witnessed, and indeed continue to witness, mark a generational change in the system of trade amongst nations. They're not the first such shifts, but they are the most sudden and fundamental, certainly in the post-Second World War era. Recent events have exposed fault lines in the multilateral system of relations between nations, and that, of course, includes very much in the global trading system. And a perceived failure to deal with what is seen as persistent global imbalances. So what do I mean by the multilateral system? Well, it's the economic assessment and governance that comes from two areas. First, multilateral institutions. The IMF, the World Bank, OECD, World Trade Organization, and as the Chancellor mentioned, because I chair it to recognize it, also the Financial Stability Board. The second area is multi-country decision-making bodies that reinforce these institutions, where the G20, which the Chancellor and I are off to actually after tonight, and the G7 being important here, as the source of coordination and consensus building in a number of key areas, including trade. Now, it's become quite fashionable, of course, of late to look at this multilateral sphere and to ask, well, why does it matter? Well, I'm going to be quite robust on this. Quite simply, it's about the pursuit of economic growth and stability through cooperation. And these objectives matter a lot. They facilitate the benefits of openness through trade and through capital flows. And if the multilateral system works as it is intended, it's not, and it doesn't need to be, a winner-takes-all process. Instead, it helps us to expand the pie rather than just divide it up. But of course, nor can the multilateral system produce what might be discernibly unfair outcomes. That would not be sustainable. So the current charge against the system is that it has allowed the build-up of persistent imbalances between countries. Moreover, these imbalances are considered by those who make the charge to be unsustainable. Now, as you'll probably appreciate, there's a lot of judgment around words like persistence and unsustainable. And views will, of course, and do differ very markedly on this point, or these points. And of course, it's not any old imbalance that's a problem. I think that's a very important point to make. Imbalances in the world economy are an inherent part of the system. In the short term, they reflect differences in national productivity and income. In the longer term, they reflect the fact that countries are at different stages of their economic development. Some are catching up, others are relatively slowing compared to the later developers. Persistent imbalances, though, are associated with misallocated resources and can motivate responses which can weigh against global growth. And over time, they can lead to financial stress. Now, if this global system is working efficiently, over time, these imbalances ought to self-correct back to levels that are warranted by longer-term fundamentals in the countries involved. So you may well ask, well, what are those fundamentals? Well, An important part, one very important part of it is that in part of the world, there are, including this country, there are populations that are on average aging and will, I'm afraid, on average, continue to do so. And of course, there's another part of the world where that is not the case. Now, this will influence imbalances. Aging tends to change the pattern of saving behaviour. And external current accounts are equal to saving minus investment in an economy. So that matters. It matters a lot. So when we talk about excessive imbalances, we're looking for the evidence that that self-correction is not happening in the sort of timely, orderly and manner that it should be expected to do. And of course, then we're looking to say, well, if that's the case, why is it happening and what conclusions should we draw from that and what should we do about it? And I want to argue tonight that a key part of drawing those conclusions is that they really must be done at the multilateral level. If it's only done at the national level, we will get less good policy making. Now, I'm going to illustrate this with two contemporary, and I think probably the most obvious cases, China and the USA. They're obvious in a sense because between them they account for about 40% of the world's current account imbalances, so it's an obvious place to look. So let me start very briefly with China. China's current account surplus is at present 2.3% of its national GDP and about 0.4% of the world's GDP. That's according to the IMF data. It appears that the surplus primarily reflects the weakness of domestic consumption in China, which in turn reflects an investment and export-led growth strategy and weaker social safety nets domestically. Now, normally, as households' accumulated precautionary savings rise and productive investment opportunities decline, the national saving rate would fall. But as Chinese incomes have increased, the self-correction mechanism has been weaker because the domestic incentives to save appear to have remained much stronger. So let me turn to the US. The US current account deficit is at present 3.9% of its national GDP and about 1% of global GDP. At the macroeconomic level, it appears to reflect strong private consumption and a large fiscal deficit. So why has the self-correction mechanism not operated in the US? Well, I would put forward two reasons for that, and they're both important. The first of it is that on the face of it, the US economy looks like a success story. It's had stronger productivity and economic growth in recent times. That's reflected in particular the success of its technology sector, and it's maintained industrial leadership in key growth sectors. And the consequence of that is that domestic wealth has risen, foreign capital has flowed into the US, and that's allowed it to run an external deficit, reducing that downward pressure on domestic demand that would be there otherwise. Now, the second reason is that people outside the US have been willing to take on its obligations. They've bought its assets. The auto-correction element points to limits to that willingness to take on those obligations. But those limits tend to be higher, less constraining, that is, when we're talking about the world's leading reserve currency. And this is what we've seen happen. Now, I'm not going to talk about reserve currency status this evening, beyond underlining that what I've just said does illustrate the benefits of it in economic terms. It's what Valéry Giscard d'Estaing famously described as the exorbitant privilege. Now, there may therefore be good reasons why the self-correction mechanism on external imbalances are not working particularly powerfully. Indeed, I would also note that the imbalances today are actually not that particularly large by historical standards. But before coming on to suggest some changes to the multilateral processes, I want to draw out a number of what I think are key points from this picture. First, the underlying drivers of these imbalances are domestic macroeconomic policies. Trade policies and industrial policies can, and indeed have, reinforced or sometimes frustrated the macroeconomic picture in countries. So they are highly relevant. But I do think they need to be seen within the context of this macroeconomic story. And that's essentially what the founders of the IMF said when they drew up the IMF's articles at Bretton Woods. Second, and I'm going to say this in a spirit of very constructive challenge and engagement, what I regard as the best sense of multilateralism, I think the US does need to explain how it can regard its internal imbalance as sustainable and its external imbalance as not so. It's a friendly challenge. And how does it envisage the internal balance responding to an adjustment of the external balance flowing from tariffs taking effect? Again, a friendly challenge in the best sense. And China needs to explain how it will tackle its persistently weak domestic consumption. Again, a friendly challenge. Third, the adjustment process is challenging. There are times when it has had to happen, but those have not always been easy. Why is that? Well, deficit countries have historically faced far more pressure to correct excess current account balances than surplus countries. And this correction typically takes the form of financial market pressure for deficit countries. And that financial market pressure point could be relevant, even though we're talking here about the reserve currency. It's very hard to judge the limits of sustainability, and of course we've seen market disturbances in recent times, in recent months. So we do have to be on high alert to the financial stability risks, something that I can assure you both the Bank of England and the Financial Stability Board are following, and a few others too. Surplus countries don't face that same financing pressure. The pressure to adjust, as we are seeing today, can come more through threats of tariffs and trade barriers. But increasing tariffs creates the risk of fragmenting the world economy and reducing activity. We can go back to Adam Smith and his contemporaries for the insight that trade expands activity. So there is a common interest globally in tackling excess imbalances before dangerous levels of trade restrictions come into play, and before we face the prospect of difficult adjustment and volatility and financial instability. And I would contend that this is where the multilateral system comes into play. Now, the IMF doesn't have policy levers in its possession directly to address global imbalances, but it has got a crucial role to play in facilitating globally beneficial adjustment through its surveillance. It plays a central role in casting a very rigorous and independent eye over the economic and financial systems of individual countries and the world as a whole, and providing timely warnings where problems are being stored up for the future, and giving its members sound advice on how to mitigate risks. IMF assessments can forcefully highlight the dangers of unaddressed excess imbalances for surplus and deficit countries, and provide scenarios that illustrate the benefits of globally desirable paths for gradual and symmetric adjustment. And with the support of its membership, the World Trade Organization can help to reduce tensions around imbalances by rebuilding confidence in a rules-based trading system, including around the issue of non-market policies, and particularly where they may be exacerbating excess imbalances. So the WTO can help to achieve agreement amongst its members on the global rules of the road and how they should be adhered to. So I'm going to set out 4 proposals which are very deliberately quite modest, but just a starting point for reform in the multilateral system. There could be more ambitious reforms, but I think we have to start by getting the foundations repaired. My first is that I think the IMF should strengthen its assessment of the implications of excess imbalances, with greater focus on spillovers and greater depth of trade analysis. My second is that IMF advice that comes out of this assessment should have greater prominence and some more, frankly, bite by increasing the emphasis on imbalances in Article 4 reports. My third is that the IMF should collaborate with the World Trade Organization, combining the macroeconomic expertise of the IMF and the WTO's insights into the most challenging aspects of trade discussions to provide a more nuanced assessment of the global trading system and to enhance the traction of its messaging on industrial policies. My fourth is that the IMF should be creative in deploying its convening power to help coordinate members around a set of mutually agreed policies which can mitigate risks associated with excess imbalances. Now, I said there were modest proposals, but I do not underestimate the challenges here. But I do agree with Secretary Bessent that getting the basics right here matters, and this is where the focus needs to be now. Bringing industrial policies and subsidies into a macroeconomic framework isn't straightforward. It's easy to say it, it's less easy to do it. But I think we have to ask that question, and I think the IMF can answer it and build on good work being done in other parts of the world. Similarly, I think capturing the nature and extent of international spillovers from domestic policies is not easy. It's not at all easy. But again, it's what we must do. Another important element of this approach must be to assess the potential for and consequences of imbalances unwinding sharply, with implications for global financial stability. And at the FSB, we look forward to working with the IMF, as we do, on financial surveillance, and particularly on developing system-wide approaches to testing and monitoring, such as the Bank of England did last year with its system-wide exploratory scenario. Now, to do this, quite frankly, the multilateral system has to have influence and bite. Let's be honest. Ruthless truth-telling doesn't win popularity contests. There is a risk of organ rejection. But we need to allow the international institutions to be assertive and consistent in calling out unsustainable situations and practices. It's critical for the reputation and legitimacy of the institutions. Many observers of the international political system have said that so-called Westphalian states don't naturally embrace strong multilateral institutions and advice unless they're in a crisis. They tend to get there only when they get to crisis. And this question of how to reconcile an open world economy with national interests is old as the hills, frankly. The rules of the process, though, I think do have to be accepted. And I'll be frank, the imposition of rules by one player, however dominant, isn't a recipe for sustained stability. And let me finish on this by saying it helps to remember that the key challenge we all face, as the Chancellor said, is to increase growth here in the world economy, to grow the pie, to support living standards for all the people that we serve all of the time. It's as simple as that. So, Lord Mayor, as I said, I can promise the second part of my remarks is very brief by comparison. It's about payments here in the UK. There are real opportunities to harness the potential of digital technology for retail payments, both domestically and cross-border. If we do, we can lower transaction costs, we can reduce fraud, we can improve the functionality of payments. It can make a real difference. In the last few months at the bank, we've successfully introduced the new real-time gross settlement platform, which underpins settlement of wholesale and retail payments in this country. This change offers great opportunities for innovation across the landscape of payments, and I want to give a big congratulations to my colleague Victoria Cleland and everyone involved in doing this. There is more to... But we recognise there's more to do. So we will take forward work in collaboration with the authorities and industry to design and deliver the next generation of UK retail payments infrastructure. This must be a priority, both to replace the current ageing infrastructure and as part of promoting growth in the UK on the Chancellor's agenda. This means a system of retail digital payments that keys off each of our bank accounts. There's a lot of debate globally at the moment on the future of payments, both domestic and cross-border. Today, most payments are made from bank accounts in what we call commercial bank money. That's, in some ways, a statement of the blindingly obvious. What it does, though, is to tie payments directly to the creation of credit in the economy. Now, there is an urgent need, I think, for innovation in this area, and the opportunity is there, no doubt about that. There are other innovations. There may well be a role for stable coins going forward, but I don't see them as a substitute for commercial bank money that creates credit in the economy. There may also be a role for retail central bank digital currency, but I have to be honest with you, I remain to be convinced why the natural next step needs to be to create a new form of money rather than put digital technology into retail payments and bank accounts. So that's what we're going to do. This is an important step forward and one that I'm excited about. We have the opportunity to show real leadership here, building on our world-leading new RTGS system. So, Lord Mayor, we've got some very big challenges on the world stage, and also, to be honest, some optimism and excitement here in the UK on payments. Thank you. So it's now my duty, and actually my pleasure as well, I should say, to propose a toast to the Lord Mayor and the Lady Mayoress. The Lord Mayor and the Lady Mayoress.
Chancellor, Governor, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a joy to have you all here this evening. Thank you very much indeed for attending a really lovely evening with us here today. I'd like to thank the remarkable team who put on such a lovely spread for us. I'm very grateful to you all. Thank you. Could I thank you, Chancellor, plus also you, Governor, for your excellent speeches. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. Can I leave you with a couple of thoughts? A, jump on planes, bang on doors. Is that clear? You got that? Fantastic. B, sign the employer pension pledge. Have you got that one as well? Thank you very much indeed. Please do that. Last thing from me, though, is it's an informal exit from the tables here today. We have pudding and some drinks straight through. Do enjoy those. Do come and have another conversation with us all. And we can further some of the conversations during the course of this evening. And I will just leave you with one last thing, and that is, further to my point earlier, that anything is possible. If Noel and Liam Gallagher can get back together, we can do anything. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.